the Bible remains one of the most scrutinized and analyzed books in history. The question of its reliability is central to theological discussions, historical research, and textual criticism. Within biblical scholarship, two major areas of focus are the New Testament's textual integrity and the Old Testament's historical dating. Scholars have long debated whether the New Testament accurately reflects the original writings of the apostles and whether the Old Testament, particularly the Hebrew Scriptures, has been faithfully transmitted over the centuries. The New Testament, composed in the 1st century AD, has an unparalleled number of surviving manuscripts, some dating within decades of the original compositions. This abundance of copies, written independently across vast regions, suggests that no single authority controlled their transmission. In contrast, the Old Testament's dating has been greatly informed by the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which predate medieval manuscripts by over a millennium. These ancient texts provide critical insights into the transmission and preservation of the Hebrew Scriptures. This study will explore the reliability of the New Testament and the dating of the Old Testament, demonstrating that both have substantial historical and textual support. One of the strongest arguments for the reliability of the New Testament is the vast number of existing manuscripts. Currently, there are over 5,800 Greek manuscripts of the New Testament, along with more than 10,000 in Latin and over 9,000 in other languages such as Coptic, Syriac, and Armenian. No other ancient document comes close to this level of textual support. By comparison, Homer's Iliad has about 1,800 manuscripts, and the works of historians like Tacitus and Thucydides survive in only a few dozen copies. The earliest known fragment of the New Testament is Papyrus P52, a small portion of the Gospel of John, dated to around 125 AD. This is remarkably close to the original composition, which is generally believed to have been written around 90-95 AD. Other early manuscripts, such as the Codex Sinaiticus 4th century AD and Codex Vaticanus 4th century AD, contain nearly complete versions of the New Testament. The sheer number of manuscripts allows scholars to reconstruct the original texts with a high degree of certainty. Unlike many ancient religious texts controlled by centralized authorities, the New Testament was written and copied by independent groups of Christians spread across different regions. This decentralized transmission prevented any single group from altering the text on a large scale. The letters of Paul, for instance, were circulated among early Christian communities in places like Corinth, Ephesus, and Rome, often copied and shared among believers. The existence of multiple, independently copied manuscripts also helps scholars identify and correct later scribal errors. If a variant reading appears in one manuscript family but not in others, scholars can compare different textual traditions to reconstruct the most likely original wording. This method, known as textual criticism, has allowed researchers to confirm that the vast majority of the New Testament text remains consistent with its early copies. Critics often point to textual variations among manuscripts as evidence against reliability. However, the vast majority of these variations are minor, such as spelling differences, word order changes, or grammatical shifts, that do not affect meaning. Only a small percentage of textual differences involve meaningful content, and even in these cases, no core Christian doctrine is undermined. For example, the longer ending of Mark 16:9-20 and the story of the woman caught in adultery, John 7:53-8-11, are debated textual additions. However, because these passages are absent from the earliest manuscripts, modern Bible translations note them as later additions. The fact that scholars can identify such variations demonstrates the transparency of textual criticism and the overall reliability of the New Testament. In addition to manuscript evidence, the writings of early church fathers provide further confirmation of the New Testament's reliability. Christian leaders such as Clement of Rome, c. 96 AD, Ignatius of Antioch, c. 110 AD, and Polycarp, c. 120 AD, quoted extensively from the New Testament in their letters. If all copies of the New Testament were lost today, scholars could reconstruct nearly the entire text from the quotations of early Christian writers. The Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered between 1947 and 1956 in the Qumran caves near the Dead Sea, represent one of the most significant archaeological finds of the 20th century. These scrolls contain fragments of nearly every book of the Old Testament, as well as other religious writings. The scrolls are dated from around 250 BC to 70 AD, providing direct evidence of the Hebrew Bible's textual history over a millennium before the medieval Masoretic text, which was previously the oldest known Hebrew text. The Great Isaiah Scroll, one of the most complete biblical manuscripts among the Dead Sea Scrolls, is nearly identical to the Masoretic text of Isaiah, showing that the Hebrew scriptures were copied with remarkable precision over centuries. Scientific methods such as radiocarbon dating and paleography, the study of ancient handwriting, have confirmed the antiquity of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Carbon dating of certain scrolls places them between 200 to 100 BC, while paleographic analysis aligns with these findings, based on comparisons with other ancient scripts. This independent verification strengthens the claim that these texts were in use centuries before the advent of Christianity, providing a reliable witness to the early form of the Old Testament. Before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, scholars primarily relied on three major textual traditions of the Old Testament. The Masoretic text, MT, or the Standard Hebrew text compiled between the 7th–10th centuries AD. The Septuagint, a Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures from the 3rd–2nd centuries BC. The Samaritan Pentateuch, a version of the Torah used by the Samaritan community, dating back to at least the 2nd century BC. The Dead Sea Scrolls contain texts that closely align with all three traditions, confirming that different versions of the Hebrew scriptures circulated before the standardization of the Masoretic text. This suggests that while minor variations existed, the overall content of the Old Testament remained remarkably stable over time. While some scholars argue that variations in biblical texts raise concerns about their reliability, the overwhelming manuscript evidence supports the claim that the New and Old Testaments have been faithfully transmitted. Skeptics point to differences among manuscripts as evidence of corruption, but textual criticism demonstrates that these variations are minor and do not alter fundamental theological teachings. Additionally, the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls has confirmed that the Old Testament was carefully preserved over a vast historical period. The fact that these ancient copies closely match later versions undermines claims that significant changes were introduced over time. The reliability of the New Testament is reinforced by the vast number of manuscripts, their early dating, and the decentralized transmission of the text. The Old Testament's dating has been firmly established through the Dead Sea Scrolls, which confirm the accuracy of the Hebrew scriptures over more than 2 millennia. These findings support the view that both testaments have been remarkably well preserved, providing a strong foundation for their historical and theological significance.